Hi, welcome to the final presentation for the Arapahoe County Charrette Group. We're a group of students and professional volunteers from CU Denver working in fall 2020. Next slide. This presentation is going to go through the process that we had and eventually show you the results we came up with for Arapahoe County. Next slide. When we initially met with our sponsor, we learned that they are hoping to work with justice-involved individuals and in particular people who are experiencing homelessness. Through the plot of land that they have, they were talking about getting 60 to 100 single occupancy units, hopefully with a mix of studio and one bedrooms, with at least 5% of these units to be fully accessible. In addition to the housing that will be provided on this site, there was interest in having a community room, library, and social area with outdoor spaces. All of these project sites and on-site programming were intended to be done with trauma-informed design. Examples of on-site programming include life skills training, educational opportunities, job attainment services, mental and physical health care, legal services, addiction recovery, and access to recreation. Next.
So we pulled some demographics to establish an understanding of who of the target population for this project. We included a comparison to Denver just to account for potential spillovers. So right now, total population of Centennial is 109,000. The difference between poverty is between Centennial and Denver is about 10 points. And homelessness, we pulled this data from the 2019 point in time count, and there was 617 people counted in Arapahoe County, not including Aurora, compared to the almost 4,000, sorry, in Denver County. Next slide. So before introducing the site, we wanted to emphasize a takeaway for our group was learning about what a project like this could look like and understanding that better so we know where to best place it in the community. This South Lima site is just one potential site being considered for this project. So here we have a broad context of where our site is compared to familiar places like Union Station. It's only 16 miles away. Also, this map is showing relation to the highway system and RTD lines that are closest. Next slide. So now we have a site context. Surrounding the site to the north is retail. To the west is currently open space. To the east is the Family Sports Center. And to the south is the Arapahoe County buildings. The site's also located just north of the Centennial Airport. And within the site, it's about 4.1 acres. And it slopes down from east to west about 8%. Next slide.
So here we have the zoning context surrounding the site. And first and foremost, the majority of the area is comprised of either business park or commercial uses, followed by a sprinkling of open space, recreation, and agriculture, as well as a little bit of urban residential, which is truly lacking in this part of Centennial. And then following that, there are a lot of parcels that are zoned for either Inglewood, Greenwood Village, or unincorporated Arapahoe County, with Walmart being the essential accessible grocery and other retail for people that would be living on the site. Next slide. And so here we did a comparative zoning context considering that we plan to rezone part of the site to urban residential from general commercial. So here we have first parking spaces per one bedroom, which would be 1.5 spaces for urban residential, 1.04 spaces for general commercial, and 1.08 spaces for water walk hotel apartments, which this is a precedent for a lot of the decisions that we'll end up making in our site plan. And so here next we have a minimum landscape surface ratio, which would be 10% open space for urban residential, 15% for general commercial, and then water walk landed on 38.4%, followed by a max building height in urban residential to be 30 feet, and then 50 feet respectively for both general commercial and water walks ultimate decision. And then setbacks are pretty straightforward as well. A minimum of 30 feet for both front and rear, as well as 5 feet for interior side and 10 feet for street side for urban residential, followed by 10 feet for both front and interior side for general commercial, and then 25 feet for both street side and rear for general commercial as well. And then water walk definitely extended far past that minimum to 47 feet for front, 99 feet for interior side, 123 feet for street side, and then 73 feet for rear. Next slide. And so here are just some of the decisions that were made as far as zoning was concerned for the specific site that we studied and worked on. So this is taking into account both general commercial and urban residential considerations. So we first decided on 0.85 spaces per studio or 1-bedroom unit, and this is taking into account a lot of decisions made for variances for transitional and permanent supportive housing in Aurora and surrounding Arapahoe County. And then a 20% open space ratio, followed by 30 units per acre maximum density for the multifamily buildings, as well as 30 feet building height for the residential on the eastern part of the site, as well as 50 feet for commercial on the western part of the site. A 30% building coverage ratio, followed by 30 feet front and interior side setbacks, and then 50 feet street side and rear setbacks. Slide. And so here we have just a review of some of our early site plans. So in version 1 of our site plan, we had 3 different teams collaborate on separate designs. So Emily would have a team meet 1 day a week, followed by Paul and Tom. And then we incorporated concepts from trauma-informed design. So a lot of open floor plans, a lot of open space, viewing space, so that no areas are encroached upon or residents would feel unsafe. And of course, every Friday we reviewed with sponsors to gather feedback and revise our site plans, as you'll see in future site plans that we improved upon. And we discovered that up to 150 units could fit on the site, but this was more or less unreasonable given funding sources, which Carlin will touch upon later. And then we essentially reaffirmed that there wouldn't be enough non-residential uses to fill a whole ground story that would account for the existing zoning for those 150 units that we planned for originally. Next slide. So here's version 2, where we created multiple buildings that could terrace the site. We explored different phases in open space that could transition to adjacent uses, such as that commercial use that we did confirm. We focused really on a compact courtyard arrangement that delineated between public and private spaces, so that nobody was uncomfortable or was confused by the alignment or arrangement of the space. Slide. And so this is what we finally decided on in phase 3 of our site plan. And these are the 3 phases that we landed on in our design solution. So first was 60 units with that aforementioned variance request for 0.85 spaces per unit, followed by 13,350 square feet per level for a total of 40,050 gross square feet. And then phase 2 is the commercial lot in the western part of the site, and that would comprise a little less than 7/10 of an acre with remaining general commercial zoning and a story that is 6,000 square feet, and then 24 spaces to account for 1 per 250 square feet. And then phase 3 would be a zoning accessory to urban residential, including a detox inpatient unit with 36 beds at around 100 square feet per person, as well as some parking solutions to account for beds in the unit, as well as loading spaces for employees, and to account for the staff to patient ratio that would allow for 24 spaces.
When going into the precedent studies, it was important to look at similar projects that were centered around public supportive housing, different design approaches in the western part of the United States, as well as investigate what a PSH housing development would need programmatically. Looking at the first one being the Argyle Gardens focuses on modularity, a project located in Portland, Oregon that was completed in June 2020 that houses 72 units. The most intriguing part of the design response was Hulse Architects' concept of LISA, or low-income single adult housing. This refers to a low-cost modular co-housing system that can be organized into various configurations. In turn, the modest size of each unit combined with both a co-housing and modular off-site construction method led to development costs that were 31% lower than similar affordable housing undertakings. Next slide. 72 Foster focuses on design response. This project is located in Portland, Oregon, again, completed in March 2019. It was designed for 101 public supportive housing units. The bulk of the building along Southeast Foster Road creates an urban street wall that reflects the area's increasing density. The building's angled shape respects the existing neighborhood scale, provides a new courtyard as a public amenity, and acts as a buffer between the bustling Foster Road. The building's exterior alternates brick and handy plank for texture and variation without sacrificing durability and affordability. Next slide. 7900 East Colfax Avenue focuses on mixed use. Located in Denver, 7900 East Colfax Avenue houses 83 public supportive housing units. With extensive experience in developing and managing affordable housing, BRI teamed up with Brain Injury Alliance of Colorado to provide supportive housing and on-site services to families with a focus on people with brain injuries who are experiencing homelessness. The development will include 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. BRI will have an office on the ground floor providing various housing and neighboring services to the community. Additionally, Mercy Housing intends to lease the ground floor commercial space to a provider of affordable, high-quality early childhood education services. Next slide.
So after taking into consideration the the existing nature of the site, as well as some precedent studies of where we envision this project going, we then moved into formulating and finalizing the site plan. And right here is the final site plan, and you can see the 3 phases that Matt touched on briefly earlier, with the phase 1 being the primary residential building, as well as having office space and communal spaces. Phase 2 being a commercial section, being parceled off and sold. And then phase 3, which would be a detox facility. And then just some general notes on the site. It really responds to the physical nature of the site, as it's all open to the south to ensure that there's like maximum sun exposure to the site, and to make sure that the buildings aren't blocking and making areas icy in the winter and that sort of thing. And it also an unexpected way that it responds to the client kind of proposal is it does include a smoking area kind of on the eastern edge of the residential building, because that was one specific need that we hadn't thought of before, that the client brought to our attention, that was a big need for this population. Next slide. And then here is a section cut looking at just kind of how the site lays into the land. And as you can see on the smaller map to the bottom right, the section cut line goes right through the residential building as well as the commercial area. And, and with utilizing terraced walls in the courtyard to the east of the phase 1 and phase 3 buildings, it really allows for the buildings to blend into the hillside, kind of from the view from Lima, so that they don't protrude like above the hillside and really stick out and draw attention. Next slide.
All right, hi, my name is Justin, and I'll be talking about the architectural decisions we made primarily for the permanent supportive housing. So this is the phase 1 construction of the group's idea. And I think through this process, we were trying to marry both trauma-informed design, characteristics of the site, as well as the programs that our sponsors desired for this project. So to highlight some of the key features we did use in the design, we have a single controlled entrance at the corner of the 2 wings of this building. And that allows the staff to be able to view people going in and out of the building, as well as give support when needed. Out front, we also have a covered bicycle storage. The area doesn't have close proximity to public transit, so we're hoping to facilitate bicycling for those that are able to do so. In terms of trauma-informed design, one aspect that the group focused on was ensuring that the windows of each unit does not face other units, to give residents the feeling of privacy. So we made sure that that was employed in the orientation and form of the building. With that also is that the building gets a lot of exposure from the southern sun. So this building is solar energy ready when that becomes applicable. We try to give each unit 2 windows to the outside, as well as large glazing along common spaces for daylighting purposes. And finally, we had a second entrance for a hot room so that personal belongings could be processed separately from the main entrance. Okay, next slide. And then here's just a perspective view down at the front entrance of the building. We did want to highlight the vertical circulation core with a lot of glazing that could be kind of a beacon for the building, as well as we see that bike shelter that's in front of the building in view of the front desk. Okay, and here's a view of the southeast of the building. I think one of the main values that we wanted to give the community was a community garden or an access to an outdoor space. The site is heavily sloped to the west, so we imagine that the terracing of the site could also facilitate garden beds and the ability for people to enjoy that space. We also have a smoking area along this outdoor area, as well as a place for animals or service animals to exist. We also wanted to give the building 2 different characteristics for each wing. So along the north wing that's highlighted in red, we have this kind of horizontal articulation. And then the blue wing, the south wing, we articulated with vertical fins, giving it a vertical aesthetic, but also acting as a solar shade for those windows. We also wanted to give access to the residents to outdoor space easily. So in addition to the ground floor community garden, there are balconies on the 2nd and 3rd floor for easy access for those that live on those floors. Okay, next slide. And then here's a view down in the outdoor space, showing the community garden, showing the patio that directly connects the architecture to this space, and then some of the aesthetics and facade articulation of the buildings.
So now to take a deeper dive into kind of the interior layout of the buildings and kind of how they function inside. As you can see, I mean, maybe not see, but it's very reminiscent, the design in many ways, to like a college dorm, because it's very heavily focused on safety as well as community interaction. And so you can see here, the area outlined in purple on the 1st floor would all be really community-centered uses. It's really just the gathering place, kind of the heart of the entire building. And it also, involves a vestibule, which ensures that even if the building's locked or nobody's at reception, you're not going to be stuck outside. You'll at least be able to have an escape from the elements, and just to provide like that extra level of comfort and safety for the residents. You can go to the next slide. And so now looking at the floor plan for the 2nd and 3rd floors, this is much more residentially focused, but there's still a strong push for community interaction in having the laundry space being communal for all the units on each floor, and having kind of in the middle of the 2 wings, having that communal space to really help draw the residents out of their rooms and foster that community interaction. Next slide.
Okay, and then now just looking at a typical unit for the building is we tried to keep things compact, but also make sure that there was enough space for basic amenities and access to all the furnishing in the room. So on the left, we have kind of an example of something that was an inspiration for the group. On the right-hand side, we have a basic typical floor plan for one of the units. There's a full kitchen with a dining table, a living quarters in the top right with access to a window, a 1-bedroom area on the top left with a window, and then on the bottom left having a bathroom with a walk-in shower. So this is highlighting again some of the aspects of the typical unit. I think the group really was interested in this idea of choice for the residents, and giving people a sense of ownership and agency within their own space. So to do so, the group thought about employing things like blackout curtains along the windows, ensuring that there was a mix of fixed and operable windows for the unit to allow a lot of daylighting for those that would like that. We have a personal workstation in the bedroom, as well as a large storage closet for personal belongings. We also chose to show this floor plan without a door for the bedroom, or it could also be seen as having a sliding barn door. And this was to allow residents to feel that they can see the entirety of the space and to give kind of an openness to the space overall. We thought about employing adjustable dimming lights to the space, again, to emphasize the choice that one would have, walk-in shower for easy access, and a full kitchen. And then just zooming in a little bit to that first floor common space, I think the main amenities is we wanted this space to be really welcoming and comfortable for those living in the residency. So in this space, there is a small kitchenette that people can access. We thought about the doors that would lead to the outdoor room being large, a lot of glazing, potentially even garage doors that can really open up and allow an indoor-outdoor feel to the community garden. There's small alcoves for those that would like to do some personal work, as well as we try to keep some of the staff and offices in this adjacency so that there can be a constant connection with staff and residents.
So Enterprise Green Communities. Enterprise has created a national standard for developing green affordable housing. And using the worksheet that they provided, our project totaled 58 points, which exceeded the 35 minimum or needed to pass. And we met criteria in the following sections: location and neighborhood fabric, site improvements, energy efficiency, materials beneficial to the environment, and healthy living environment.
All right, so I'll walk through the phase one kind of high level financials. As we've seen, it's 40,000 square feet construction, which includes 26,000 square feet for residential and 5,100 for community amenity spaces. There'll be 60 one-bedroom units at 441 square feet each. And these would be available for 30% AMI and Section 8 with 60 vouchers. The full market rate rental is anticipated to be about $1,200 a month, which would result in 825,000 gross income, minus the projection of 330 total operating expenses for staff, insurance, services, utilities, and the like. This brings us to approximately 475,000 net operating income for phase one only. And then moving on to the cost of construction and the use of funds, we're projecting phase one to be approximately 17,500,000, which works out to just under 300,000 per unit. We're assuming the land value in this case is $1.5 million. If the phase two commercial section were sold off for the development, this could help offset the cost, but this is not calculated in this analysis. And in addition to the land cost, the largest uses of funds are site work, new construction, construction interim cost, and developer fees. In terms of this funding sources for phase one, for soft funds, we're assuming no general fund dollars based on what we heard from our sponsor. Will not come from Arapahoe County, but there's an opportunity to apply for $250,000 from the Community Development Block Grant Program and another $250,000 from the Home Investment Partnership Program. And then in terms of state soft funds, applying to the Department of Housing for subsidies to build permanent supportive housing would allow for $20,000 per unit for a total of $1.2 million. Of course, the largest source of funds would be $9 million from low-income housing tax credits. And like we said, the income from the other parcel could potentially offset some of these expenses for later phases. So in closing, these were the contributors, and we thank everyone's involvement in this charrette process. We enjoyed working on the program and our involvement with all of these organizations. In terms of participants, we had a large group of sponsors, professional volunteers, as well as students and co-leaders to help get to this final solution. And we look forward to seeing the final project come to fruition. Like we said, it may not be this particular site, but we know that there is need and desire to build this, this housing and programming in this area. And so we look forward to seeing our contributions come to life in the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, hi, I'm Kelsey. I'll be starting us off today. We wanted to start with sharing a picture of all of our faces because human interaction and face-to-face contact is rather low at the moment. And we wanted to try and recreate that any way we could. So our team has been working over the past few weeks to compile information and pull together some really cool ideas for a regenerative housing plan in Montrose. So this is the structure of our presentation today. We've kept it pretty bare bones for the sake of time, but there is much more information provided in the appendix.
So the vision for our project today that we're going to present is a vision of regeneration for all and a pathway out of poverty for residents of Montrose. Montrose has been investing heavily in urban renewal and a lot of economic regeneration that is centered on their riverfront on the Uncompahgre River. But that has not been inclusive of the entirety of Montrose. Some members of the public have been involved, and a lot of business interests have been involved, but it really has not yet included low-income residents, differently abled communities, the chronically homeless, the formerly incarcerated community members, and several other sort of groups. And so we're looking to create opportunities for not just regeneration for the waterfront and the tax base of Montrose, but regeneration for humans and ecology together. So to achieve that vision, our site plan incorporates 4 overarching design methodologies that cross scales from individual people to whole community impact. Those methodologies are universal design, trauma-informed design, regenerative ecological design, and regenerative socioeconomic systems as well.
The Team Montrose, made up of students, project leads, habitat members, and stakeholders, met weekly throughout the 10-week process. From these meetings, we were able to tease out site design principles and create an ideal site layout that highlights what's important to the community and for future tenants. The target demographic for Habitat is low-income individuals and families, people experiencing homelessness, formerly incarcerated individuals, and households with diverse backgrounds and abilities. Based on key indicators, Montrose is primed for affordable housing development. These figures came from the Montrose Public Schools, the US Census, and the Colorado Health Foundation's Health Report Card.
So for the physical site that we have here, it's located generally off US Highway 50 in Montrose, pretty much the main drag. We do have a very sizable site provided by Habitat of 8.6 acres. The zoning would seem problematic, but given what we are trying to do here, it's totally, we're able to get away with pretty much any development with the planned development through the city of Montrose.
unmute myself there. So like I mentioned earlier, the site, which is located in the top left corner of that map, outlined in black, is very adjacent to a lot of the urban renewal efforts of the city of Montrose. So there's a strong public-private collaboration to bring in both high-end residential development and light industrial manufacturing that sort of piggybacks on a broadband internet access project that's been sort of implemented in the last several years. So that Colorado Outdoors real estate development is sort of outlined and highlighted in red. We're also very close to town. And the impact on renters in Montrose has been really significant for that. So, you know, housing within the town of Montrose has increased by more than 60% in cost from 2018 to 2019. But, you know, you can see there's a lot of improvements that have just really made housing, the housing market a lot hotter than it was previously. Active transportation is also, you know, an important consideration. We're serving a lot of populations that may not have access to a car or necessarily be able to afford all the expenses with vehicle maintenance and ownership. So when we look at that site, it's within about 2 miles of the majority of town. There's adjacent bike lanes and hike and bike trails along the river, and additional roads are going in adjacent to the site through that Colorado Outdoors development. So walkability and bikeability, active transit is a fairly accessible option for this site.
So the first design methodology is universal design. The principle of universal design is focused on creating environments for people of all ages and abilities, but the space is functional and comfortable without sacrificing style. The second design methodology is trauma-informed design, which is based on trauma-informed care, the assumption that clients have experienced trauma. This design principle takes a deeper dive and adds a layer of how the built environment both affects safety, well-being, and healing. A designer should be intentional about creating a space that is welcoming, calming, safe, and provides varying degrees of privacy. This is where clear sight lines between buildings and overall design principles originated.
So we really wanted to focus on the idea of regeneration. Regenerative ecological design is a concept that we think positively benefits all sectors of this development. It provides physical and environmental protection and built-in long-term affordability. We also imagine this development as providing regeneration for residents and communities. So starting off with regenerative agriculture, we want to provide an open and environmentally conscious space. We think regenerative ag is the best way to do that because it requires minimal effort from residents and will be around for a long time. So these are just a few examples of regenerative agriculture: permaculture, soil restoration, carbon farming, site-wide compost and hugelkultur, as well as food forests and yeah.
One element of regenerative ecological design that we'd like to incorporate into the site is gray water reuse. Montrose currently does not actually have a gray water code, but they are able to opt in. And because of a lot of the development pressures and climate change pressures regarding wildfire and drought in this region, we anticipate that they will at some point in the near future develop gray water code and adopt that. So from roughly 100 household units, which we have a few more than that on the site, we estimate that we could conserve around 266,000 gallons of irrigation water annually through gray water reuse. that could support 2,000 plus trees and save approximately 15,500 of operational budget. And to clarify, gray water reuse is the reuse of water that is used for laundry, for bathing, or for hand washing. It is not the reuse of toilet water or kitchen water. Another element of regenerative ecological design that we are incorporating into our site is stormwater harvesting. We are mimicking the natural flow on site and connecting to the adjacent river, both physically and sort of psychologically and conceptually. Using native plants that are adapted to Montrose, Colorado's rainfall patterns will enable low or no irrigation for most of these areas, or gray water supplemented irrigation, and also provide habitat for birds, butterflies, and other critical pollinators that also need a place to live, right? So part of this also supports the natural connection that residents can feel as part of recovery, as part of trauma-informed design.
So one design aspect of regenerative design is the concept of biophilia. These images show how important active and passive access to natural light and nature are, and it's very simple to include these in site designs and building design. So biophilic design is a concept used within the building industry to increase occupant connectivity to the natural environment. And they do that through the use of direct light, indirect light, direct nature, and space and place conditions. Biophilic experiences can reduce stress, improve cognitive function, and enhance mood and creativity. These and other outcomes can increase health and well-being, as well as productivity for residents and the community at large.
Another element that we're hoping to incorporate are regenerative socioeconomic systems. So we're incorporating sort of two models of housing that connect to regenerative socioeconomics. The first is housing first, which is a method of housing sort of the most chronically homeless individuals and individuals who are having a hard time finding housing and are likely to end up homeless because of criminal records, a history of addiction, and other challenges. The second model that we're incorporating is community land trusts. Community land trusts are a very effective tool to support low-income residents build equity. So rather than just renting, they're actually building their credit and building equity that they can then leverage to purchase a home. So it's a model of ownership where the land is owned in common and the house stays affordable in the long term, but the house itself, the structure, is owned by the resident.
Right. Yeah, this is a site plan showing our designed parcel and access from both North Townsend and North Grand Ave as it connects to Merchant Drive. We have two affordable housing buildings, one housing first building and a community building to be completed in phases. Zooming in just a little bit, this plan shows the site organization and how the buildings are laid out. For the three housing buildings, net rentable square footage is 91,886 square feet, and the gross buildable square footage is 142,033 square feet. So for our larger unit affordable housing building, we fit in 10 two-bedroom units, 22 three-bedroom units, and 4 four-bedroom units to accommodate a few larger families for a total of 36 units in this building. For the smaller unit affordable housing building, we implemented 24 one-bedroom units and 13 two-bedroom units for a total of 37 more units. And the housing first building is almost identical in layout to the smaller unit building, however, with different site orientation and a slightly different character. And it also contains 24 one-bedroom units and 13 two-bedroom units for 37 additional units. And here is a parking diagram to show how we organize the parking for the buildings on the site. We combined the parking for the two affordable housing buildings, 1 and 2, and at 1.5 stalls per unit, we would need 109.5 stalls, and we implemented 120 stalls in that green zone. And for the Housing First building, the requirement was 55.5 stalls, and we implemented 56 stalls in that orange zone. And then for some additional parking for the community building and the community gardens, we implemented 13 additional stalls that would connect to both of those through a network of different pathways. Did you want this one, Danny?
Sorry. Yeah, I was like, I was trying to remember.
Oh, that's
Edit
all right.
that out, James. So our community building is really the center of this site plan. We wanted to accommodate a lot of different programs within this space. So there's a commercial kitchen that can be rented out or used as a place for small business development for residents. There's shop space, storage for individuals who may not have enough storage in a small unit, offices, counseling areas and areas for telehealth, conference rooms and classrooms, as well as physicians' exam area, computer lab and access, and a general lounge. There's a lot of programming that we'd like to incorporate in line with some of those goals that we stated at the beginning of this presentation. So obviously commercial kitchen, which I previously mentioned, incorporating some sort of maker space or community bike shop, a place for creativity and construction, a community garden for food production and that biophilic connection. Obviously admin offices and counseling rooms, classrooms, computer room, telehealth, and gathering space and lounge. And these are just some photos from case studies that are included in the appendix of this presentation.
So this is just kind of an interpretation of what the community center might look like. It's kind of a rendering taken from the Center Street access looking at the building towards the west. And it's just an example of how this might look and how things might start visually coming together. This is, another interpretation of the character of the building, and we wanted to include a character and building form that accommodates the various needs of the tenants, but also visually permeates the history and culture of Montrose, and intentionally focuses on the progressive site amenities in terms of sustainability and self-sufficiency.
Another important part of our site design is the landscape. Obviously, there's a lot of focus on regenerative ecological elements and community-based elements. And so those come together in the landscape plan. The central road that you see moving through the site, we're envisioning as a pedestrian-oriented street that serves as fire access and staff access for loading and unloading. But traffic would be diverted with bollards on either end and kind of create a sort of cobblestone pedestrian feel with either permeable pavers or street murals or some other sort of alternative surface. On the back wall, which I'll show you in a second, we're kind of unable to bring stormwater or gray water to the back side of the property that faces Townsend. So we're implementing a sound barrier wall to mitigate some of that road noise, and envisioning some community murals that would help create a sense of beauty and a sense of place. Community garden is planned adjacent to the community building. And here's some example photos of what that might look like in a way that is implementing universal design and accessible for seniors and individuals in wheelchairs. We're also looking at a food forest, which is sort of a native and low maintenance program of fruit trees and herbs and other sort of whole ecological systems that can be foraged. And that tends to be a climate adapted and pest resilient system of sort of agroforestry. And finally, we're envisioning around the affordable housing buildings and sort of the courtyard created by them, a play area for children and adjacent patio space that's shaded with deciduous trees that can provide some climate adapted comfort for adults that are nearby. So where that shows up on this plan, you can see in the blue areas, that is sort of where we're envisioning stormwater sitting. And this accommodates about 100% of a 24-hour, 100-year storm, right? So a design storm. And we're envisioning that to be a shallow stormwater infrastructure system. So really spreading that water wide and distributing it across the site to benefit the most vegetation and increase canopy cover. We're obviously planning for this main street to be pedestrian oriented. On that back wall on the east side facing Townsend, we're envisioning some murals shown in those last photos. And then these purple areas in the center are where we envision play areas, maybe some nature-based play concepts for children, and adjacent patio space and sort of courtyard space with places for adults to supervise and gather, share a coffee with their neighbors, maybe get some work done. To the south of the community building, this is where we see the community garden. And then adjacent, this food forest and sort of walking paths with spaces to stop and reflect and engage in some mindfulness.
In order to account for the development process and infrastructure improvements, we are suggesting that this is a phased approach going from east to west. The first phase will be the affordable housing so that there would be at least some income coming into the project teams for the second phase of the project, and also to keep in account of grant cycles that may come and go as the development process goes through. This is financial analysis that was helped with figures provided by the Department of Labor or Local Affairs. A lot of these numbers are pulled from similar developments that have been produced in either Delta or Grand Junction, and we settled on like the cost per square foot, for example, at $237.35. That's kind of universal across the board here, and then we anticipate that low-income housing tax credits will be utilized for a majority of our funding for this project as well. Overall, this is just a breakdown of a lot of what we're looking for, especially since AMI is not really a conversation that we've had since we were trying to go for the broader low-income community of Montrose. In general, I would like to thank my cohort here for helping put together this project. I'd like to give a special thanks to our architecture team of Rob Rydell, Eric Hall, and Brett Jacques, as well as the steering committee from Habitat for Humanity, all their assistance in this project, as well as a number of other figures that played into our project from the state of Colorado, from the city of Montrose, et cetera, that have helped us put together this project as it is. Thank you very much.
But welcome everybody. We're gonna journey to San Luis today. I'm Jake. We have Annie and Sam and Shrishti and Kyle and Kayla as well, helping out with the presentation. So we're gonna start with the agenda. We'll start with the introduction to San Luis as a town. We'll talk a little bit about the original proposal and the parcel and some of the ideas associated with that proposal. We'll then talk about the new approach that was created after a bit of research and virtual touring of San Luis. And we'll back that new approach up with the economic conditions, the state of housing, and a vacant properties analysis in San Luis. And then we'll finish up with some architectural drawings and ideas for the future. Just to orient those of you who do not know where San Luis is, it is, as you can see, on the southern end of Colorado, just north of New Mexico. And zooming in a little bit closer, you can see that San Luis sits in the valley between Culebra Peak and Blanca Peak and neighbors the Great Sand Dunes and is just west of I-25. A little bit closer still, from north to south, we have the Centennial School, and this is the town of San Luis itself. We have the originally proposed lot, that 20-acre parcel at the top. We have the acequia, or the water ditch, which we'll talk about a little more. There's the cuva and the neighborhood, the residential area in San Luis. And then you can see in the middle, we have the Shrine of the Stations of the Cross, and Sangre de Cristo Catholic Church, which kind of formed the heart of San Luis and like the communal center. And then we have downtown Main Street and the economic center of San Luis. Now I'll introduce you a little bit to the town itself. It was established in 1851 by Spanish settlers. And as you can see from the picture on the rise, it is known as the oldest town in Colorado. It's on the National Register of Historic Places and was designated a National Historic Area in 78. A majority of the current residents of San Luis are descendants of the original settlers. And although Costilla County is one of the poorest counties in Colorado, we really want to stress that San Luis and Costilla County are rich in cultural heritage and history, and like a really strong sense of community. And we'll get into that a little bit more as we go. Here are just some more pictures of San Luis, mostly from that Main Street downtown area. And you can also see in the top left the bridge that crosses the acequia, the water ditch, one of the bridges. Now I'll talk a little bit about the original proposal and the original parcel given to us. So it's a 20-acre parcel on the very north end of San Luis. And the original project was catered towards small houses for seniors, veterans, young families, single moms, those who are in transition and needing to move from homes that are in disrepair. And then also there were some ideas about housing new teachers who most of them currently live outside of San Luis and commute into the school. And we wanted to, the proposal wanted us to establish some homes for the teachers so they could live within the town. And then we got a little bit more into the process and we hosted some interviews with town residents and the town manager who was here, Susan Sandiford. And we learned a lot more about San Luis. And these were really, really valuable interviews and meetings that we held over the course of a few weeks. And in this first one, we learned that a lot of the homes are more than 50 years old. A lot of them are in major need of repair. Some have been vacant for years. We also learned that these homes have been passed down from generation to generation and kept within the families. And as one of the poorer counties in Colorado, most of the San Luis residents do not have the financial means to repair these old homes. We found out that the current individuals who own these houses sometimes don't live in San Luis, but have held on to these homes because of sentimental value, also because of the land rights associated with that property, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. But what we discovered was a few context-driven solutions that made potentially more sense than developing that 20-acre parcel. into brand new affordable homes or subsidized homes, because there are so many homes that already and commercial centers that already sit vacant within the town. So our solutions then, and we'll say more about this in just a little bit, but we propose to renovate existing homes, develop ADUs on suitable properties, create business incubators on the ground floor of existing commercial properties, and then develop key vacant parcels for multifamily homes. And with that new approach, we broke down our group and all of our many volunteers into 4 distinct groups, one focusing on housing, one focusing on economic development, one focusing on urban planning, and one focusing on architecture. And with that, I think I'll pass it along to Kayla.
Yeah, so I'll start by talking a little bit about the economic conditions in San Luis. We can see that about 35% of the population in San Luis lives in poverty. That's compared to 30% in Costilla County and about 11% in Colorado. The median age is also significantly higher in San Luis and Costilla County. So 47 in San Luis, 51 in Costilla County, and 37 in Colorado. And the median income is much lower in San Luis than the state of Colorado. So $25,000 a year in San Luis, $30,000 in Costilla County, and nearly $70,000 a year in Colorado. A lot of the work that's done in San Luis is in the government and agriculture spaces. So about 36% of residents in San Luis work in government and 26% in agriculture. And then a small percentage of residents work in other industries such as retail, healthcare, and hospitality. So we figured out that there is a housing issue in San Luis, but it's more complex than not enough homes. More than 20% of the housing in town is currently subsidized, and nearly 40% of units in Costilla County are vacant. Residents are having trouble making the leap from subsidized housing to homeownership. This is the real problem we've identified, and economic development is a big part of that. Lack of income means that most residents can't qualify for traditional loans or mortgages or even some USDA programs. And there are several challenges that come along with economic development. So more than a third of residents in the county have income levels below $20,000 a year, and more than 60% of residents make less than $40,000 a year. And the lack of employment opportunities means that most young people are forced to leave town after high school. There's also an in-migration of older people, which means that the percentage of working adults in town and in the county is relatively low. San Luis has historically had employment opportunities in extractive industries and agriculture, but the extractive industries really are not sustainable because once the resource is gone, the employer picks up and leaves. And San Luis has seen this happen with both gold and timber. And additionally, climate change poses a threat to agricultural industries there. It's already a very dry place. San Luis gets about 10 inches of rain per year. And as climate change accelerates, that's probably going to get even worse. Lastly, there's also a lack of infrastructure in town. Internet infrastructure can be spotty geographically and can be too expensive for some residents to afford. And there's also no natural gas infrastructure in town. So both of these issues prevent San Luis from attracting new employers and residents. So the economy in decline leads into the housing issue. Real estate values are less than construction costs, which means that there's really no incentive for developers to build for profit. Any subsidized housing unit built is worth less than it costs to build the day it's occupied. And because residents generally have low income levels, no capital for a down payment, and no evidence of good credit, that really limits their ownership opportunities. So even subsidized housing goes years before finding buyers who are qualified to purchase. So we believe that there's no way to solve the housing issue in San Luis through simply housing construction, less expensive housing, or even deeper subsidies. The solution has to, at least in part, come from economic development to raise household incomes within the community. And then here's a chart that shows the net migration by age in the county. So you can see that young people are leaving in large numbers, and the people that are coming into town are generally older, like ages 60 to 65. So creating economic opportunity is really key to keeping young residents in town and creating a vibrant economic situation. Many young people that we spoke to said that they would like to move back to San Luis if the economy could support them. And during one of the interviews, a woman named Christina Martinez told us that there's a sense of history you can feel in your bones when you're in San Luis. And this is a sentiment that was really common among the people that we spoke to. These people really feel a sense of community and history there, and they really like to live there, but the economy simply cannot support it right now. And in addition to keeping people that are from there in town, there is also a tourism opportunity. San Luis has a rich cultural and religious history. It's the oldest town in Colorado, and many people come there to see the Shrine of the Stations of the Holy Cross. Additionally, many people drive through town on their way north from New Mexico. But right now, there aren't many shops or restaurants that give tourists an opportunity to spend their dollars there and contribute to the economy. But we think with a few potential solutions, that could be changed. So a few potential solutions we've identified are in the food industry first. Because a lot of people don't have the capital to purchase a storefront, they could potentially rent a space owned by the town or secure rural development loans or grants to help them get started. Food trucks are another low-cost option that we've discussed, and they could be parked near the new town plaza or the new town park to incentivize people to congregate there and give people an opportunity to create that sense of community or keep it going. There's also a commercial kitchen in the town's Heritage Center, and that could be a place for local chefs to cook food that they could then just sell in other shops, and that wouldn't require them to purchase a storefront. We've identified that San Luis is currently lacking grab-and-go options for people in the agriculture industry, as well as county workers who only get a 30-minute lunch. There are other opportunities in assisted living. So currently, seniors who need care need to drive elsewhere in the valley, like up to 45 minutes, so it's not that close. Healthcare could also provide job opportunities for residents. However, San Luis is historically a Hispanic community where many families prefer to keep their older family members at home. So we would need to do some kind of a survey to figure out whether San Luis residents think that this is a feasible solution. There are also opportunities in creative industries. So creatives across the state need culturally rich and low-cost places to live. So if San Luis had the infrastructure and the housing options to support them, that could be a good fit. The town is looking into a partnership with Colorado Creative Industries, which offers several grants and programs, and they designate streets and areas as creative districts, which could help attract creatives from across the state. Lastly, as for upgrading infrastructure, some USDA programs could be used to help secure access to natural gas. And as for internet, Colorado passed Senate Bill 152 in 2005, which prevents towns and counties from controlling broadband service. But if they chose to opt out, as several other cities and towns around Colorado have done, they could potentially secure cheaper and more reliable internet service for residents. And then I will hand it to Sam to talk about housing specifically.
So I'll be digging into the state of housing in San Luis a bit more and possible solutions. I'm going to start with some quick demographic information on existing housing conditions. You can see that both San Luis and Costilla County have a much higher vacancy rate than the rest of Colorado. And it's amazing that Costilla County's median home value is that much lower than Colorado's overall, while San Luis's is another $30,000 below that at $82,000. You can also see that rent is incredibly low within San Luis and the county. And then moving on to owner-occupied housing, I want to give you an idea of the housing stock in the county as well. 70% of occupied housing is owner-occupied. It's not surprising that the majority of this type of housing is single detached units in such a rural area, but it is interesting that such a large proportion are mobile homes. And then moving on to rental occupied housing, you can see that detached units make up about 50%, 51% of the housing stock, but then the other half is mostly mobile homes in 2 to 4 units. And now I'm going to oversimplify the housing problem in San Luis with 3 icons. We know that there is a high vacancy in the area, but most of these houses are substandard. The median year of construction in San Luis of these houses is 1967, so half of their housing is over 50 years old. Deferred maintenance has caused this housing to fall into disrepair. And so there's a shortage of housing for both those looking to buy and rent. And like we've said, many teachers have to commute into town due to the lack of rentals. Part of the reason this is the case is because there is a general unwillingness by vacant homeowners to sell. And as Jake had talked about earlier, many residents or previous residents of San Luis have strong cultural ties to the land. There are also unique property rights tied to home ownership in San Luis that allow you to have access to the Vega. And probably the biggest issue, which Kayla talked about, is the financial barrier to home ownership. Many residents within San Luis who are currently in subsidized housing, but are making enough to pay a monthly mortgage, struggle to have high enough credit to get a mortgage and or enough resources for a down payment. And so now as we move into solutions, it's important to remember what Jake said, that though San Luis is poor economically, this town is so rich in other ways. This community is very tight-knit and rich in history and culture, and these assets play into our solutions piece. Our housing professionals and community members helped us come up with two routes, two solutions that we can move towards. One is that we realized we need to take an incremental approach. The city would only need about $100,000 to buy a home and use sweat equity, so harnessing the community's skill set to rehab a house that would ideally be sold to someone in the community or even a rent-to-own situation. This would contribute to a revolving loan fund to fix up homes one at a time. Key partners would include SLV Housing Coalition and CHAFA. And then at the same time, we can incentivize vacant homeowners to rehab their homes through a low interest loan rehab program that will allow these owners to rent and also hold on to those homes. That way we can both breathe vitality into the town by filling these vacant homes and replenish the town's rental stock. So now I'm going to move into the steps towards getting that first home rehabbed and filled. One is form a steering committee to guide the project and provide accountability, momentum, and community connections. This can include outside resources like CHAFA, Colorado Division of Housing, that might have helpful technical assistance to offer. Number two is identify land and physical asset. So this means identifying which home to renovate first. Number three, a family to rally around. A great way to get the community excited about this project is by involving them in the process of choosing a household that the first house is for. So this means creating a community process to identify the household that will be the beneficiary. Third is fundraising. So seek grants to cover acquisition of the home, construction cost, and staff time to manage the project. And then lastly is construction and technical training. So working with the local community to do the renovation work, including apprenticeships and trade schools. And this is a great way to tie into the economic development piece by weaving in a technical training element to the renovation process. And then I'll hand it off to Jake and Annie.
All right, thanks, Sam. So in order to start that rehab program that Sam's talking about, we had to do a more detailed analysis of some of the town geography and characteristics of the properties in the town. So just to review, Jake kind of covered this at the beginning, but here's a context map of the town of San Luis. We've highlighted the Cuva neighborhood, and then downtown is just south of that. There's also La Vega, and you can see the original 20-acre lot in the north side of the town. In terms of zoning, most of the town is zoned for single family use, with the southern portion of Main Street predominantly commercial, and some public uses throughout the town. In terms of affordable housing that already exists in the town, we did a little bit of math and discovered that with the 4 apartment complexes that are highlighted on the map here, as well as the 10 units throughout the town that are just distributed homes, San Luis has a total of 82 affordable units, which makes 21% of the units in San Luis affordable, which is an astronomical number. And all of this is managed by the Castilla County Housing Authority. So looking at these statistics, it guided our approach, thinking about why we didn't want to develop the original 20-acre lot and think about more strategic infill and rehabilitation. So as part of this analysis, we also identified every single vacant property in San Luis. So in the dark blue, you see undeveloped lots. In the other blue, you see existing homes that are vacant but may need renovation. And then in the orange, you see existing commercial that is vacant, some of which have vacant units above. So in looking at all of these vacant properties, we wanted to identify the first units and lots to involve in this rehab program. So we wanted to identify the first home to renovate, the first lot to build an ADU upon, potentially the first lot to develop when the town is ready to do that, and then look at some mixed use properties to renovate. So on the map at right, you see 4 properties which meet those descriptions, one of which we actually found a rental property that seemed to be in pretty good condition. So we included that as probably the very first candidate to involve in this program. So here's a little bit more about each of those 4 properties. The first rental, which I mentioned, 105 8th Street, it's in excellent condition, as you can see in the Google Street View photo. So we thought that there was potential to rent it as is and make that the first home in the program for minimal sweat equity, getting that first teacher or family that needed transitional housing into that home. The first renovation in ADU was 611 Main Street, which we determined because it was within walking distance of downtown. So it's a central visible location where people driving by into town could see the renovation happening, and it would involve the community more in this project. And it's also right by the San Luis Community Park. And then it also has the potential for an ADU because there's a large backyard. The first mixed use renovation that we identified was the former hardware store in town, which also has a unit upstairs. And we chose that one because it seemed in okay condition and was also a central visible location. Finally, the first lot, when we were considering lots, many of them were on the periphery of the town and might have been more difficult in terms of walkability and would be better to retain for retaining natural habitat or stormwater retention. So we chose a lot that was very central, walkable to downtown, and had this nice tree canopy. So in deciding all of these lots, what we first had to do was identify every single vacant lot. So we created a giant spreadsheet of every single vacant property, which we will be sharing with the town, and I won't go through, but this is how we did this. And we considered several different factors, including, as I keep mentioning, proximity to downtown and walkability, the visibility of the project to the town to get more residents involved and excited about this rehab program, the condition of the unit already, size or square feet of the property, whether an ADU might be feasible. And then I kind of alluded to this earlier, but when looking at the vacant lots, we considered the value of developing the lot versus retaining it as open space for habitat and stormwater management. So some summary statistics. Out of that spreadsheet, there are 12 vacant commercial properties in San Luis, 15 vacant units, and then 48 vacant lots. So a lot to work with moving forward. And I'll pass it off to Kyle and Trishti.
Can you go to the next slide? Okay. So talking about San Luis's current vernacular, it is a mix between Colorado and New Mexico, where the architecture style is leaning towards what is typically found in towers in Santa Fe. San Luis is a town which is rooted in history, as previously mentioned, with architecture typical of the American Southwest. And the suggested materials for future development would be those which are locally available, like adobe, stucco, and wood. By incorporating traditional designs with local materials and familiar forms, designing for simplicity and functions would then complement its current culture. The downtown area and the seemingly neglected properties offer an opportunity for reinvention and should be designed with family in mind, as the extended family in one household is in local culture is prevalent, and multiple living areas on one lot may increase the quality of life for residents. So we also came up with a new construction ADU, which is designed keeping in mind the site 611 on Main Street, as Annie mentioned, which is also a 1 acre parcel and has the potential for an ADU because of the large yard. And this could also be used as a typical ADU above a detached garage on a parcel with an existing structure that could increase the quality of life for residents. So this typical unit is approximately 640 square feet above an existing or a new detached garage with 2 bedrooms and a full kitchen. So things to keep in mind with respect to construction of an ADU are the required side and rear setbacks for an ADU above an existing garage, which is 5 feet, regardless of the setbacks of the existing detached garage. An ADU above a garage should be designed with colors, materials, and forms that are consistent with the design of the garage. And the second story window placement should be sensitive to the privacy of the ADU and adjacent neighbors.
Now moving on to the 3-bed single-family new build located at 400 Trinchera Street. And thinking about the design for this house, we imagine it being occupied by a STEM family, which, if you're not familiar with, is when a couple and their child or children move into a home of their parents so that their children are raised in the home of their grandparents. So with that in mind, and the close-knit family and community dynamics of San Luis, we created a U-shaped home that has units that are separated and connected at the same time. Couple's living quarter is in the L-shaped segments, are connected by a covered porch and share a central courtyard formed by the U-shaped house. This allows for the family to be close to each other, but also.
Kyle, you're kind of cutting out. I don't know if it's just me, but I can't hear you right
also have their own privacy. Can you hear me?
now. Now I can.
Can everyone else hear me?
Yeah, we can now.
Where should I start back? I'll just go back about this. So with that in mind, close-knit family community, we created this U-shaped home that the units are separated but connected at the same time through a covered porch and then a centralized courtyard so that the families can be close but also have their own privacy. Lastly, we looked into kind of a dream concept for a mixed use new build space located near community anchors and future developments in the downtown area. This mixed use would be sited between the town hall and the convenience store. This site is adjacent to remodeled Heritage Center, the Catholic Church Town Square, which will be just to the north of Town Hall for creating a sense of place in San Luis. When designing this mixed-use space, we thought about the phrase growth as necessary. This rolling these housing solutions slowly rather all at once. Next slide. Growth as necessary. Can you go to the next slide?
Are you speaking right now?
I think my internet is awful today. Can you guys hear me?
No, yeah.
Okay. When designing this mixed-use space, we thought about the phrase "growth is necessary." This idea mirrors our planning strategy.
I'm going to turn off my video and hope that that helps. Maybe everyone
Of rolling out these housing solutions. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can now. Try one more time, Kyle.
All right. One bedroom apartments above unfinished space, so that the city doesn't have to put all their money into these merchant spaces at the beginning. At the beginning, it would just be elevated one bedroom apartments, and then those spaces below could be unfinished for parking. And then as time goes on, or whenever the city is economically ready for it, those spaces can become merchant spaces for restaurants, coffee shops, or a place for creatives, for an art studio. And then this also money to the economy.
So Kyle's frozen.
So we.
Okay.
Here he goes.
If someone wants to do the thank you, so I don't keep cutting out.
Yeah, I got you, Kyle. Obviously, there are tons of people we need to thank. Everybody here on this Zoom call who was able to attend, thank you very much for coming. And then this is just a very brief list of everybody who is involved, but it keeps going on. Susan Sandiford, especially the town manager of San Luis, JV and Adam, who were the team leaders, Ryan Kim, Jason Medina, who is a town resident and who helped out, Tiffany Gallegos, who's the town mayor. We have Daniel Flora, Josh Robinson, Willow Williford, Elena Scott, Jeff Owsley, who's here. Thank you, Jeff. And everybody else, Doug, Brittany, Christina, Jeremy. Thank you guys very much. I'm pretty sure Annie wants to go out on a song.
I just added this because I recently realized that this song by Gregory Alan Isakov is about San Luis, and I love this song, and it's beautiful, and you should all listen to it.
Should I ask for questions first, Annie, before you play us
I
out?
wasn't going to play it. I just put it there as a plug.
Sure. If there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
How did the client kind of react to your guys' proposal, like initially? I mean, I think it's great, just with all the existing conditions and all like the work that you kind of went through. Was this what they were envisioning, or how did they respond?
I mean, we kind of worked pretty hand in hand with JV and the town and kind of came to the same conclusion together as far as I understood it. So it seemed like it was jointly envisioned, but I'll let other people add on.
Yeah, I just said this in the chat, but I agree. Like, it wasn't like we like have been working pretty closely with them the entire time with Susan, and like started talking to residents really early. So it wasn't really like we were separated and then gave them this proposal. It's kind of like we've been doing the research together and all kind of like came to this conclusion like simultaneously.
That's really cool that you guys had that collaboration and support from your project lead.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think it shows how valuable boots on the ground, so to speak, is. JV was able to go to San Luis and talk to the town manager, Susan Sanderford, many times about what is really needed and what is lacking. Something that we wouldn't have gained just by virtually exploring and talking to we would have gained a little bit by talking to the residents, which also helped a lot. But yeah, I think it just speaks to how important it is to actually go and see and experience the place.
I want to say I love this project. It's out of the box, like it's not in the box thinking. It's approaching this problem really creatively, and I think you've leveraged like the lack of ability to access those normal modes of building affordable housing as a strength rather than a weakness. And I'm curious, so when I'm watching this, like the combination of the Vega, which I was like Googling furiously during your presentation because it's so cool, and the sort of Adobe, like natural earth and building history and architectural context, it seems like there's sort of a like radical sustainability, but in a historical context that fits the Southwest kind of vibe going on. And I'm wondering if that is something that you guys have talked about in terms of like ecotourism potential, or like a natural building cooperative that could come out of San Luis and be able to support like fireproof, climate appropriate building elsewhere in the Southwest. Like, I don't know how far those conversations have gotten, but like, what are your biggest dreams for what San Luis could be or stand for or mean as a community later?
I'll take this. We honestly didn't talk about like the sustainability aspect of tourism that much. We talked a lot about like religious tourism and like kind of like cultural tourism, but we didn't dive into the eco part of it that much. But I definitely think it's worth looking into. And I know this, I don't think we really like summed this up well at the end, but this project is ongoing. Which is why like a lot of our solutions aren't like super solidified yet, but JV and the architects in the town, they're going to keep working on this. So this project is nowhere near over. And there are a lot of potential solutions. So like every idea that we come up with now, is valuable to the town, I think.
I wonder if any of our guests have any questions or comments.
Yeah, Jeff Owsley with Chaffa, and I just want to say that this is pretty, it's impressive for me to see you all as young, sharp minds, investing yourselves in this this important little town of San Luis. That I'm based in Alamosa, and fourth generation from the San Luis Valley, and so it just means a lot to me to see what you've come up with, and I'm just so thankful, I guess, for that. Thankful that you could kind of experience the heritage and the culture of San Luis in a way to appreciate it yourselves too. And because it's a part of all of our history and all of our heritage in Colorado as the first organized town. One of the things that came up is the youth and the kind of the brain drain and the people that are leaving. And the only thing I wish, I was just sitting there wishing that you could pair yourselves with some of the youth in San Luis and kind of work with them and give them some vision and some hope and some opportunity. But I think what you've come up with will do that as well down the road. But I just want to say thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for being a part of it.
Yeah.
I wanted to say thanks as well. I'm the town manager and I've been tasked with how do we save this beautiful little historic town. And so I kind of bit off more than I could chew walking into a job I haven't done before because I was a trustee and I realized nothing was happening. Zero was happening to move the town forward. And I said, well, why don't you put me on as town manager with no experience? And so this kind of opportunity really helps me as well. I mean, we've got the town project going, we've bought more parkland, we've we've added to our park, and we're trying to create, or mainly the trustees want it to be, a great hometown for the people that love this town. And housing is one of the biggest problems. So some really good ideas have come out of that. I believe it was Jake's idea. Well, why don't we fix up the Cuva? Why don't we take what we already have and start there instead of adding just housing that may or may not sell? So I think that was one of the really greatest ideas that came out of this. And I really appreciate all of your hard work on it, because it's really giving us a direction to move toward. And now it'll be my job is, how do I make this happen? What is the best project to move forward? I look forward to trying to figure that out. We've had a couple of good, successful years with grants and projects and people falling in love with San Luis. And I really appreciate these students who have also fallen in love with it, because it has so much history and we need to save this oldest town in Colorado. So thank you guys, good presentation.
And I'm Willa, I'm another one of the volunteer professional guests. And I too so enjoyed working with this group. And it's my great privilege that I'm doing a region-wide housing. I'm a workforce housing consultant and often work on both sort of understanding the context of a certain market and then working with community stakeholders to move towards what are the solutions. And so I'm working region-wide right now in the San Luis Valley, and there are 14 communities that have signed on for doing sort of community-specific work. And there's a lot of themes in the Valley that are consistent across the Valley, but then there's also, I'm finding, in such a large geographic area, each town also really has its own special character and problems and challenges that are a little different from its neighbors. And I think this process, getting to participate as a volunteer kind of early on, is going to help inspire and inform some of the ways we try to bring together the other towns in the region. And I also really look forward to working with Susan, because there's some ability now with what's been identified that we can continue to support and advance her work over the next several months that this team is doing housing work in the Valley. So it's like San Luis got a little jump start and a lot of extra creative brain power.
Well, I'll just jump in briefly. I didn't introduce myself to our guests. I'm Jenny Steffel Johnson. I'm the professor in this class. I want to thank you all for participating in this and devoting your time and love to this project and this place, and being good mentors and instructors for the students on this team. And I agree, I think it's inspiring and interesting work. And certainly when we started this project, I don't think anybody thought it was going to move in this direction. We were thinking of it more as a traditional housing development design project. And I really admire that the students have just embraced this and really dove in and put their strengths to work on coming up with some really interesting solutions and future directions.
Yeah, Jenny, if I may, I would like to echo that a little bit, and thank you, Susan and Willa and Jeff. Just wanted to say that I think I don't only speak for myself when I say that we are inspired by the work that you have been doing as well. And we're all very glad that this project is still ongoing. And again, I'm sure I don't only speak for myself, but I would love to volunteer time as well moving forward. And I know JV is doing that and Adam is doing that. There are a lot of people who are signing on. And also wanted to say that we are particularly inspired by the town itself, to learn about the economic hardships that have befallen San Luis, and to learn that there's not a homeless population. There aren't anybody experiencing homelessness in San Luis because San Luis takes care of their own. And I think that's what particularly inspired these renovation projects and giving back to the community directly, because we know that this is doable. This is a project that could be done by just the residents. Nobody else would have to be involved. Just the residents could come and renovate a house and rent it out to somebody who needs to transition into a house or needs something larger, or whatever the case may be. So I wanted to echo what has already been said, but also offer sincere thanks and appreciation to you guys as well.